All right. So I had a really good suggestion actually from JillyBear, one of the commenters on one of my videos, about using the Oxford English Dictionary set I got. There you go. To give the definition of words once in a while. And she made the suggestion of the word propaganda, which I thought was pretty cool. I like words, so I like this sort of idea. And so I went and looked up propaganda just before I was going to do this video, which actually is sort of strangely appropriate, for the reason that I came on to just mention the fact that I was curious because I've got another couple of guys that said, oh, I'm going to convert to Christianity, to either Catholicism or Orthodoxy or something like that, as a result of having read my short book, Believe, which you can get on Amazon in Kindle. You can see it's it's not a huge book, right? It's 98 pages. It's an easy read. You can do it in a couple of hours. But it's had the effect of converting a number of people already, like probably 4 or 5. I don't know, I'd have to go through all the comments and count it exactly, but I would say it's at least definitely 4, maybe 5, I don't know. But I know that the book's just been out. I haven't really done any kind of marketing for it at all, other than mention it on this channel a couple of times. That's basically it. So I thought that there can't have been that many copies sold. So I went to check, and there was, as of last night, there was 21 copies sold, and at least 4 people that have told me they're going to convert because of it. Now you can say they might have been predisposed or whatever, but the thing is, that's a pretty impressive hit rate so far, and that's the people that have let me know. I don't know, probably some of the others have had some. I know for a fact one guy was baptized recently. And he was, I'm not even counting the beta readers. One of the beta readers, a couple of the beta readers have actually converted, and I'm not counting those. I'm just counting people that I don't know, that I've got no relationship with, that have been converted because of it. And I found that rather interesting. So I was going to mention it, and then I looked up this word, propaganda. Now it's very interesting because here it is, and I didn't know this, but the origin of the word propaganda, it says, now if I struggle a little bit with the reading, it's just because, as some of you know, as you get wiser, in your life, as you become wiser, your eyesight sometimes fades a little bit. It's got nothing to do with age, it's a wisdom thing. Let's just be clear. All right, so propaganda. From the Mod L title, Congregatio de Propaganda de Fide, Congregation for the Propagation of the Faith. In other words, it comes from the Latin of Congregatio de Propaganda Fide, so congregation for the propagation of the faith. So it's a Catholic thing. More fully, Congregation or College of the Propaganda, a committee of cardinals of the Roman Catholic Church having the care and oversight of foreign missions, founded in 1622 by Pope Gregory XV. So that's what the origin of the word is. But by 1718, in Ozel, in Tournefort's Voix Levant, I guess that's the title of a book or some writing. Apparently on page 237, the congregation of the propaganda gives them at present but 25 Roman crowns a man. So there's some references in here that are pretty obscure. That's why I love this dictionary, really. Not all of these things are at all clear to me either, so don't worry if it doesn't make any sense to you. Most of it probably doesn't make any sense to me either. 1819, in Anastasius, 1820, page 168, an Italian missionary of the propaganda. in Galenga, 1851, Italy, that's the name of the work, I guess. The propaganda was busy in Paraguay or Oceite. So these are examples of how the word propaganda was used in the context that they said, which is the propagation of the faith. So that was point number 1. Point number 2, any association, systemic scheme, or concerted movement for the propagation of a particular doctrine or practice, sometimes erroneously treated as a plural, equals efforts or schemes of propagation, with singular propagandium after Nicorondium, I don't know if that word is in even smaller type, so with singular propagandium after memorandum. Oh, append. Okay, fair enough. So it's saying sometimes erroneously used with the singular of the Latin propagandium attached after the word memorandum. So it's a very technical use of the word stemming from the Latin, which is an error in use. And anyway, and then it goes on to give, derived from this celebrated society, in Brande, Dictionary of Science, the name propaganda is applied in modern political language as a term of reproach to secret associations for the spread of opinions and principles which are viewed by most governments with horror and aversion. So by the year 1842, so in 1622, it was coined as part of the propagation of the faith. A couple of hundred years later, it had already become a term to be used as, in a negative intention of the spreading of false doctrines and ideas. It's very interesting because, this is a Protestant written dictionary because it's English, and it was started in the 1800s, I believe. So definitely when Protestantism had taken root very deeply in the English consciousness. And it's interesting to see that the use of the word propaganda went from propagation of the faith to a bad way to influence people with bad thoughts through the use of it in the English language. It's very interesting. And then, it sort of went full circle. That's how language changes over time. It's very interesting. For example, there are another 3 or 4 versions of it, but most of them are aligning with the modern version of the word propaganda. But it's interesting to think that, for example, in Portuguese, the word propaganda is used to describe adverts on TV. So what we'd call an advert in Brazil, they say propaganda. It's an advert, and I've always said, unfortunately, Brazilian Portuguese is it's a limited language. There are definite, I know that people say all languages are the same. No, they're not. You cannot discuss physics or mathematics in any depth in Zulu, in Xhosa, and similarly, Brazilian Portuguese is limited as a language. English is a far more useful language in terms of technical description of things because it has such a huge vocabulary, as indeed this 13-volume dictionary proves. Italian is a far more technical language than Portuguese, and you can explain things in a far more depth in Italian than you can in Portuguese, generally speaking, because again, Italian stems from the original Latin and is closer to it than Portuguese is. That said, English has a lot more vocabulary than Italian. In Italian, you could say, how are you? You depends on how you say it, the inflection you say it, whether you move any other part of your body with it, what your facial expression is. It can mean 10 different things. While in English, how are you is generally how are you. That's it. So it's an interesting topic, and I may well perhaps read a definition of a word at the beginning of videos from now on for a while, or when I remember to do it, because it's interesting. But it sort of ties in with the propaganda, propagation of the faith. There you go. So it's just one of those weird coincidences. So it's a pretty interesting thing that to me that I didn't, I certainly hoped it would have that sort of impact, but I didn't expect my book to have such a, right now we're talking something like a 25% conversion rate for people who bought it. I don't know that all the people who bought it have actually read it yet. That's another thing that was surprising to me, but a lot of people apparently buy books and then end up not reading them. It's sort of anathema to me. I have some books I have yet to finish reading because, maybe another book came along, or I'm always reading a couple of books at a time. So sometimes one takes precedence of another and then one gets put on the back burner for a while. But I eventually get to all of them. I've never bought a book with the intention of not reading it. So it's a bit strange to me, especially, something relatively quick and easy read as that is. But so I wanted to share that idea with you and just let you know. And those of you who have bought it, I'm assuming most of you are on this channel because I frankly haven't mentioned it anywhere else that I can think of right now off the top of my head. I haven't even put it on the blog at all. The blog's been neglected for a long time now. I probably should put it up there. It's just time. It's easier to do a video than to go into the blog and add to the tables and stuff. Anyway, that's it. That was just an interesting little tidbit. On a completely different note, everybody's talking about the Epstein suicide. There's a brilliant little meme with Hillary Clinton's face on it. It goes, "Do you want me to kill yourself? Because that's how you get me to kill yourself." It's fucking brilliant. But whether he's dead, disappeared, whatever, it's not unexpected at all. A lot of people had predicted that was most likely to happen, and certainly most likely to happen before the 14th, when I believe there was a scheduled court date in which a bunch of stuff was supposed to happen or be told or whatever. It's also becoming absolutely patently clear that Epstein was involved or working for Mossad, or the Israeli Secret Service, was somehow involved with them, probably involved with the CIA as well. And part of his situation was to do a honey trap for all sorts of powerful politicians and influential people, apparently quite successfully. And again, it's interesting to note who these people are. Really, I've watched another video of Amazing Polly, and she's got a few of them up on Epstein. I've put a link to her channel on my last video on the Nerva number 49. So number 49, if you go in the notes, there's a link to her channel. I really like that lady. She obviously does a lot of interesting, quite deep research, and she's got a lot of interesting information on Epstein and all the people involved in it, and the media people involved in it, and Vicky Ward, who says, "I tried to warn people about Epstein in 2003, and then she digs deep into it and finds out that Vicky Ward is intimately connected to Epstein and Giselle Maxwell and all these people. And Maxwell himself was also a pervert of note. It's really interesting. These people all know each other, all connected, all in the same sort of thing. MI6 is deep into the deep state stuff with the swamp in America, and there's definite collusion and all sorts of things happening from Israel there. So one thing that Owen Benjamin has been very instrumental in, whatever, again, I love Owen, I'm on his side. He's totally wrong about the moon and a whole bunch of stuff on astronomy, but that's okay. I think he will eventually come around to that. I think there's a good there's reasons why he's so skeptical about such basic stuff. I've mentioned this before, whatever. But the one thing that Owen has certainly opened a lot of people's eyes to is the Jewish influence in the zeitgeist of the planet. And when I say Jewish, I'm talking, of course, of Talmudic Jews, which are the only Jews that exist. The Jews at the time of Jesus are not the same people that we call Jews today. The Jews at the time of Jesus split into two different people. Those who accepted Jesus Christ as the Messiah, and whether they were originally Jewish or Gentiles, we now call all those people Christians. That's what they became. You have to understand that the Old Testament is essentially just a giant litany of prophecies to recognize when the Messiah would have returned. That's really all the Old Testament is about, mostly, for the most part. And it's also written in a completely different manner than the New Testament. And so there's a lot of allegory, there's a lot of metaphors, there's a lot of parable stories written as fact that are sort of parables, and parables that are written as that become fact as parable. It's quite complicated. There's a whole different way of interpreting the way that the Old Testament is written is a way of writing that we in the modern world are not really familiar with. So you need to have a little bit of understanding of that in order to sort of better grasp the Old Testament. But in general terms, big picture lines, the Old Testament is essentially a bunch of prophecies that were to be used to recognize when the Messiah would return. And most of that function is really what it's about. The New Testament is really what you focus on. And now, the New Testament, there's quite a lot of references in the New Testament to material that the people at the time would have known and understood because it referred to stuff in the Old Testament. So, there are some passages in the New Testament that make a lot more sense once you understand the context of the Old Testament at the time that it was written or at the time that Jesus was around. But in essence, the people that were truly following the Old Testament with good intentions recognized Jesus for who he was and became Christians. I mean, all the apostles were originally Jews and they all became Christians. So, the other part of the Jewish people who did not accept Jesus Christ, who had him killed, and who Jesus Christ described as the synagogue of Satan, okay? Those people absolutely hate Jesus Christ. They believe he's burning in hell in a lake of shit. He's referred to in the Talmud as he whose name should be blotted out from history. And these people are Talmudic Jews. Their religion has very little to do with the original Jews, which became Christians. Talmudic Jews are people who have rejected the Messiah, have rejected Jesus Christ, and have since used the Talmud to interpret the Old Testament. And the Talmud is essentially a bunch of commentaries that goes on for volumes that are very, very difficult to get proper translations into English. And when you do get those bits translated, that you can get translated, and there have since been some translations, you discover that the Talmud essentially is the twisting of everything in the Old Testament to suit what the Talmudic religion is about, which is essentially satanic. I mean, in the Talmud, it is acceptable to have sex with 2-3-year-olds, with little children. The Talmud is a horrific document. It has many vile, evil practices. And it's absolutely a fact that Talmudic Jews hate Jesus Christ. They consider him a whoremonger, all sorts of blasphemies. So, if you call yourself a Jew, you are saying that you're essentially a Talmudist. You're a Talmudic Jew. Okay? Because there's no such thing as Jews anymore. The original Jews became Christians. So if you say that you're a Jew, you are a follower of the Talmud. Okay? Now, the fact that you might call yourself a Jew and you might be ignorant of what is in the Talmud and you just traditionally carry on and stumble along your way is irrelevant. Okay? I don't call myself a Catholic without knowing what the rules of the Catholic Church are for the most part. I might not know every single one to the nth degree, but I know most of them. I've certainly read through pretty much all of them, I think. So it's on you. That's like saying, I'm a Muslim, but, I'm a great guy. I'm friends with lots of people. And, there are Muslims that are great people. They call themselves Muslims and they're nice people. There's nothing wrong with them. But it's on them. Their ignorance is on them. I have a very good friend who was born and raised Muslims. And he's one of my best friends, and he has since rejected Islam because he has read through the documents, because he hadn't, and he'd just been sort of brought up that way. And then he said, well, I'm now friends with these guys, which my book, the Holy Quran, the unholy, in my opinion, Quran, says that, you know, you're absolutely allowed to, not just allowed, you're instructed to always lie to non-Muslims. You are to only pretend to be their friend, but in your heart hold them as enemies. That's what it says in the Quran, you know, words to that effect. It's very clear, and there's no such, oh, but it's open to interpretation. No, because the Quran itself states there is no interpretation. This is a very simple book, and the things that are written in here are to be taken as they are. So, you know, if you call yourself a Muslim and you're unaware that you're to treat everyone who's not a Muslim as basically an enemy and only pretend to be their friend, that's on you. But I have read the Quran, okay? And I have read parts of the Talmud. So I'm going to treat you as what you say you are. If you say you're a Talmudic Jew, I want very little to do with you, because you hate my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and you are basically saying, okay, it's all good, to practices that I find worthy of being put to death. Okay? Because having sex with little children, as far as I'm concerned, is a capital offense. And by the way, Jesus Christ said it would be better for such people to be drowned in the sea with a millstone around their neck. And he was ever merciful. I'm not. I'm a flawed human being. So I'm all for burning such people at the stake. It's a civilizing effect of the Inquisition. Burning people at the stake is very much misrepresented. If we burned pedophiles at the stake in the public square, guess what? Within a year, there would be no more pedophiles anywhere in the world, right? We just have the Mass in original Latin all around the world, and we burn pedophiles at the stake. Guess what? Pedophiles would suddenly disappear, right? And those who have pedophilic tendencies would be able to control them very well, except when they can't and they're caught and burnt at the stake in the public square. Yeah? So, if you're a follower of a religion that states it's perfectly fine to have sex with little children, yeah, or that your holy prophet had sex with little children and therefore it's okay, yeah, if you're a follower of one of those two religions, I will have nothing to do with you. I will not want to do business with you. I will not want to have any association to you, and I will not buy into anything that you're selling. Okay? That doesn't mean that I want to put such people into, you know, concentration camps, or that I am literally Hitler, blah, blah, blah. None of that. I just don't want to engage with them. Don't want to engage them, don't want to buy anything they're selling, and I will expose their lies, because these people operate on a bunch of lies. They essentially try to pervert and twist things, including the Bible, to suit their nefarious purposes, which is infiltration and subjugation and the twisting and the upside downing of everything. So when you come across a churchian that has been brainwashed by a Talmudist into believing that, oh, you should all turn the other cheek, and oh yes, you should allow the mass invasion of, you know, people with cultures and religions that are so anathema to yours that they literally want to wipe you off the face of the earth, and you should welcome them with open arms. You know, that's what the Inquisition was about. You know, people think the Inquisition was about burning hot-looking women at the stake for the crime of being sexy. No, that's not what the Inquisition was. The Inquisition killed about 3,000 people, and then only in the very extreme circumstances that where it was patently clear these people pretty much deserved it, over a period of a couple of centuries. And what was the original point of the Inquisition? It was to get rid of the fake converts. The Talmudic Jews in Spain conspired with the Muslims to invade Spain. And Spain was invaded by the Moors and taken over, and pretty much, you know, became a Muslim enclave for hundreds of years. And it was only when Charles Martel, you know, Charlie the Hammer, you know, that's a good name, you know, Charlie the Hammer, basically said, no, we had enough. And over the next couple of hundred years, they pushed the Muslims all the way back out into the Middle East and away from the Iberian Peninsula. But what happened was that while this was going on, a lot of Jews had helped the Muslims and still had trades and all sorts of treaties going on with the Muslims to keep them as invaders. And this became more patently obvious So the Catholics said, hey, listen, we're done with you guys. Leave. Either convert to Christianity or get the fuck out, because you're a toxic species. You're an invasive species that's trying to get another invasive species to destroy us. So we gave them the option, like, get the fuck out or convert. And so a lot of them converted fakely. And the Inquisition was essentially set up to root out these fake converts who carried on having the treaties and the underhand dealings with the Moors, so as to maintain them into, what was properly a Catholic territory. And the Inquisition exposed these people, and when they refused to leave, or so on, burnt them at the stake. Sometimes, other times, killed them, whatever. I am sure that there were probably a couple, a few dozen, whatever, innocent people that got killed in the Inquisition, or mostly innocent, because who's truly innocent? But anyway, take Joan of Arc, right? Joan of Arc was burnt at the stake, and I believe Joan of Arc was rightly made a saint. I believe Joan of Arc was indeed some kind of a prophet to a certain extent. And it's very interesting because as Catholics, the refrain of Paul of "I shall not suffer a woman to speak in church," we pretty much adhere to that, rightly so, for good reasons. And yet Catholics are also, they get blamed for Mariology, but all that Mariology is showing proper respect to the Mother of our Lord, which why wouldn't you? And the Catholic realism about the roles of the sexes in marriage is absolutely fundamental to the faith. And funnily enough, I discussed this with my wife the last time I went to church, when we went for Mass, which we generally can only get there once a month because there's only a mission here for real Catholics. And I just, on the way back out, I said to her, it's interesting. All the women at our church, they're all married, they all have kids, and they keep making more kids. And they're all very feminine, and there is something really quite sensual, attractive, sexy even about them. And, keep in mind, of course, in church, everybody's dressed conservatively, and, there is there's no sexy dresses in Catholic Church, right? And I'm not meaning this in any kind of lecherous way. It was just an observation on the femininity of the women in the church. And she said, without batting an eye, well, yes, of course they are, because they're women. They're proper women doing what proper women are supposed to do, which is making children, being good wives, and being good mothers. And it's like, and they're happy. They're all astonishingly humble and happy women, and it's amazing, and it's a very interesting dichotomy compared to the zeitgeist of the world, right? But the thing is, for example, that simple truth, I suggest you go and look at a chorus of women singing from the 50s or from the 40s. They're all very well dressed, well done up, all slim, not obese blobs, all very dignified. I saw a video in black and white of a lady on a piano with a bunch of other ladies singing near her, and it was such a powerful thing to witness, because you're like, wow, I wish women were like that today. You can just see each one of these women walking around town, dressed like that. And again, no sexy dresses, right? We're talking 1940s, 1950 type clothing. But their hair is all in place. They're all very pretty. And even the ladies that are not particularly, pretty, structurally, are well dressed, well maintained, and they have a femininity that is still attractive, regardless of the fact they might not be, beauty models or anything. So these are important things, they're relevant things, and that's all been perverted, twisted, and changed by the actions of people that will sell you a false bill of goods. But you have to buy into it. You have to buy it, So it's up to you. And again, that amazing Polly did a video on like how to hurt them. She knows how to hurt them. The globalists, the people that are trying to brainwash everybody. And she basically says, get rid of your smartphone. Now that's a tough call. I don't think that's going to work. It's true what she says. It's true. If everybody suddenly got rid of their smartphones, and even say the videos, only did this stuff and only access it on their computer, and that's it. They refused to carry smartphones around, and they did everything the old-fashioned way without using smartphones. Yeah, it would set the globalists back at centuries. But we're not going to do that, because human beings are unfortunately very stupid, very lazy, and they will go to the easiest thing. I mean, I wrote a book. The books that I wrote, the fiction books I wrote, on the the Mars series, the Overlords of Mars series, which I've only got the first 2 books out. The 3rd book has been a long time coming, and it's still, I need to make some time to finish it. But in there, it is part of the story, and I started those books almost, the first one was written in 2011, and I had all the concepts in there already formed, was the fact that, the books are set in 1999, and that cell phones were just sort of coming into then, and that was, it's a strategy. It's a strategy to make people have shorter attention spans, be dumb, and just stupefy everybody into a bunch of cattle. And that's essentially what we're becoming. The millennials have got the attention of fruit flies. Their attention span is about 30 seconds, if they can focus. No one pretty much reads a book for 5 hours straight. No one works on a problem for like 2 days straight with barely eating and sleeping. But I've done that many times. It's a rare skill to have preserved, that level of persistence and perseverance. And that's how most of the progress of the modern world was made. It was made by Catholic monks recording in detail over a period of years the movement of the stars, the movement of the moon, to figure out basic astronomical facts which we now take for granted. It's a long, persevering type of work. So if you want to be like Owen and go out there, get a farm and start farming and getting animals, that's great. But unless you get rid of your mobile phone, unless you get rid of the digitization, unless you can literally live without paper money or banks, there's still going to be problems for you. And I include myself in that lot. I'm doing this on a mobile phone. I have a plan. My plan is long term, and not everybody has to have the same plan. I mean, part of my plan involves doing these videos and letting you know about this, and then letting the people that read this spread the word to other people. And notice, it's still flawed. It's still flawed. It's still off center, right? I still haven't fixed it. I might never get round to it. It's starting to grow on me a little bit, the fact that there's a flaw right on the cover, that it's like off center, because it's so, and it's right off center at the back as well. It's so typical of true Christianity, right? Of true Catholicism. I mean, as quite a few people in history have said, well, other people might be some other denomination, but I could only be a Catholic because I know just what kind of, evil, crappy piece of work I really am. Catholic Church is for the real worst of the worst. So, the fact that it's flawed is always a reminder that, no one's perfect. And on that note, that just reminded me of an idiot, a complete idiot, Gamma, that is in a little group on Facebook that I belong to. That it's a secret closed group, so you can't join it. Don't ask me to. You won't get in there. But somehow this idiot got in there, and he started to make a comment where like, the children will be perfect as long as the parents are perfect. And I'm like, well, that's a completely stupid fucking comment, because no one's perfect. And then he had a go at this lady who's practically a saint. I mean, she's adopted 2 little girls as a single mom, and the way it all happened is a really sort of divine inspired way. By the way, it wasn't her first choice of what to do in life. And this guy basically said like, well, we know what happens to like children of single moms. And she was like, what? And I just said, look, this guy's name just happens to be DickWilly. Honestly, that's pretty much his name. It's a little bit different, but it's DickWilly. So look, his name is DickWilly. He's a dickhead squared. That's and then he started going on about, I know the Bible. I said, listen, don't lie. you clearly have never read the Bible even once, all right? If you think that anybody is perfect. And then he said, well, that's in the Bible. No, it's not in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. What is in the Bible is that no one is perfect other than Jesus Christ. That is in the Bible. Okay, and I'm no great student of the Bible, by the way. But, this guy's just making shit up. So, understand, there's gammas, there's Talmudists, there's Churchians that all misrepresent, misinterpret, and essentially spread lies about the gospel, Jesus Christ, what's in the Bible. Again, I made a comment on one of Heiser's group, I think it's the Naked Bible group, and I'm in there just as a sort of as a social experiment mostly, because I originally discovered Mike Heiser through his videos, and I presented him to this little group of people that I'm part of, the Dread Ilk. And, some guys joked that Mike Heiser has become the unofficial pope of the Dread Ilk, which is not quite true. And, Heiser has a lot of useful stuff, and there's some useful things in it, but at the end of the day, he's still a Protestant, and he still sees things from a Protestant perspective, even though he calls himself non-denominational. Now, he is a Bible scholar of note, and I respect his work very much, but he still makes mistakes, and he's still wrong about stuff. And, that's important to remember. So, when you're studying the Bible and that sort of thing, it really is important for you to go back to the root, back to the origins of things, and look at the original writings of the patristic fathers. It's very difficult for you to read enough of those documents and then continue to be a Protestant. It's almost impossible. If you are at all honest with yourself, okay, and you read the original writings from the first 200 years of Christianity, never mind the ones that came after, because there's plenty more as well, but there's enough documented evidence there's enough documented letters of Christians from the first 2 centuries, okay, that it's enough to essentially prove that Protestantism is an absurdity, okay? Then you can argue about the details of the Philake and decide whether you're going to be an Orthodox or a Catholic, but that's basically it. So, some of us are interested in spreading that message, and I sincerely hope that every single one of you that understands what I'm saying does the same. Spread the message. It's not about, as I said, I don't make my living from my books, nowhere near, okay? I just don't. I never have, and I'm pretty sure I never will. But nevertheless, I've written some stuff that's pretty relevant, pretty important, pretty interesting if you're interested in understanding a little bit how the world really works. So I do suggest them, because The Face on Mars has got a lot of information in there that is that most people don't know, and it's got a lot of references, a lot of backups. Keep in mind that, again, I've been reading this sort of thing, since I was a kid for fun. I've been reading a lot of physics books that are curriculum level things at university. I read them when I was in high school for fun, just because I wanted to figure out how stuff works. I've tested a lot of things. I've traveled more than most human beings ever will. I have moved house 52 times. I have lived on different continents. I've lived in different countries, not just for a few months, but for years at a time. I have mixed with cultures so different one from the other that they probably couldn't exist in the same space for very long without trying to kill each other. So, I would have to be a complete idiot to not have learned some interesting things over the course of my 50 years on this planet. And as it happens, I'm no idiot. I actually have a pretty high IQ, and it's not always useful or helpful. It certainly caused me a lot of problems in life to have a very high IQ and a little bit Asperger's, and not really like dishonesty. But there you have it. So anyway, that's pretty much my little mini rant over the use of the word propaganda, how it was used to spread the faith originally, and now how it's being used as a negative political word. But there you go. And just as a last thing, because my eyes fell on it, remember The Cloud of Unknowing. You can download the old English version from the internet for free, The Cloud of Unknowing. But I strongly suggest you get the Penguin Classics translation of that into modern English and you read them side by side. It illuminates the original to do that. So that's it for today, and have a good Sunday.